Good evening and welcome to the February 2nd, 2022 Garrison Board of Education Workshop Meeting. Justy, would you call the roll for us, please?
Jocelyn Apostello, here. David Gilbert. Madeline Julian. Here. Courtney McCarthy. Here. Kent Schacht. Here. Matthew Spicer. Here. Sarah Tormey.
Here. All right. Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next up, I have accept agenda and agenda changes. Do I have any proposed agenda changes this evening? Okay. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accept the agenda as presented. May I have a motion, please? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions. Thank you. Next, we have a recognition this evening. The board would like to recognize Karen Nelson, the outgoing president of the Garrison Children's Education Fund. Karen's with us tonight. On behalf of the board, Karen, I want to thank you for your service to our district, all the time and energy, especially during COVID. I know it couldn't have been easy. And all the money you've raised, all the programs, all the grants that you've worked on. Thank you so much for doing this for our district. I know we also have a representative from the GTA here who would like to say a few words. Mrs. Van Decker, if you'd like to come forward to our lovely podium.
Hi, I'm speaking on behalf of all the teachers. Let me pull up the speech they wrote. Last week, we received the news that Karen Nelson, our beloved GSEF president, was stepping down and handing over the reins to Lauren Yaris, the new president of GSEF. Karen has been part of our Garrison school community for many years, and we appreciate the dedication and passion she has shown us during her time as president. Throughout her last few years of this pandemic, she worked tirelessly with her committee to raise the necessary funds to support the students, teachers, and programs at this school. We wish you the best of luck with your newfound freedom, and know that we will miss the entire Nelson clan tremendously. And I have cards for you made by all the students.
Next up, we have Ms. Carly Arnold representing our PTA to say a few words.
Hi. Karen, I just want to say a huge thank you. You were president of GSEF through two very challenging pandemic years. And despite, not being able to run the spring thaw 2 years in a row, you guiding GSEF, you were still able to raise money for grants. You were instrumental in guiding GSEF through mindful yoga, carbon dating in the school forest, field trip to the Clearwater and Statue of Liberty. In addition, you were an amazing part of the board that helped direct the current school play structures that are outside. You were such a strong leader in helping Garrison accomplish so many things for that, and for that we are so extremely grateful. Your guidance and your vision will be so missed.
And I have, on behalf of the board, beautiful flowers and certificate and a card. If anybody wants to say anything, now's your chance. Okay. All right. Thank you. And now you can stay for a very fun and exciting meeting. Did you want to say a few things? Well, thank you, and thank you, Lauren, for taking over. We really appreciate it. If you want to do this, you could just run after you're done with GSUP. It's a lot of fun. Okay. Thank you. And now I'm going to move us on so that we're not here all evening. We're going to go to board communications and presentations. We're going to begin this evening's presentations with a discussion on the American Rescue Plan grant funding. I would like to just let the board know that our goal for this evening is to reach consensus on submitting the grant after the review of the survey data. Joe and Carl are going to walk us. There it is. Okay. All right. So Joe and Carl are going to walk us through the responses from the survey and offer an overview of the grant. Then we can turn to the Finance Committee, which just met, to offer us some insight. We're going to look at the highlights of this grant. It is due this week. And I do want to emphasize that we have an opportunity to submit changes ongoing in the future, which I'm sure Joe will emphasize as well. All right, Joe. Carl, all yours.
Okay, so the American Rescue Plan Act is a funding stream from the federal government that was designed to address the impact of the pandemic. The period actually is from March 2020 to September 2024, and Garrison is allocated $234,000 for this grant. 20% of the grant is restricted towards learning loss activities, and that's typically either after-school programs or summer programs. We're going to allocate $75,000 for learning loss, and that's going to be directed towards the information that comes out of all of the monitoring that we do in our day-to-day business. The grant has got to be approved before March 2022 in order to access the funds, and SED wants those grant applications by the end of this week. So as we talked about, $75,000 is used to address learning loss, primarily for math and ELA. We're looking at spring of this year, spring and fall of 2023, and spring of 2024. And we're also looking at a summer half-day enrichment program in the next 3 summers. So these are open for all students to participate, but we are going to use the data that we collect to encourage those that are most negatively impacted by the pandemic to participate in the programs. So that is something that all the data and all the information that our counselors can gather is how we'll develop the targeted outreach to get some of those students. Another part of the grant that we're looking at is to upgrade the food service equipment that's in the building. We currently are not running a daily food service program, and it is something that is unique to Garrison, but it's not in a way that we want to be unique. So we're looking at ways that we can use this funding to support a new food service program that would operate every day. So there is a number of pieces of equipment that are well beyond what they normally would be used and aren't to the level to the point where we can really produce food, serve it, and store it in a way that we would be able to run a program. So we are allocating $69,000 of the grant towards food service equipment. Now, the program still needs to be developed, but we recognize that regardless of where the food production is done, if it's done here or if some of it is done at a neighboring district that we cooperate with, we're still going to need to upgrade the equipment that we have. One of the things that we have, we identified a need with is in the elementary classrooms. Although we do have some new casework that is included as a part of the capital project, one of the things that is really missing is book shelving. Because one of the things that is very typical in a elementary classroom is leveled libraries. The existing bookshelves that were in the classrooms before they were renovated were a collection of shelving that was built in place and some freestanding shelving that was not in acceptable condition. So we want to, that was not included as a part of the original project plan, but we believe that it's something that is needed. And if the grant is approved, potentially we could start procuring these things before the end of the school year and potentially have them in place within the latter months of this school year, which would get some of these teachers from the point where they are, where they have a lot of their leveled library books are in boxes currently because there isn't any shelving to put them on, and actually being able to use them on a regular basis. The other item that we have in the budget is a snowplow truck. It is, obviously it's not glamorous, it's not something that gets everyone excited, but it is something that is needed in order to keep the school open. Our unit that we have is 14 years old. One of the things that really does the end of vehicles like this is rust, and so it's something that needs to be replaced. We wouldn't want to do it right now because there's a lot of issues with the supply of vehicles. As anybody have been watching the news, this is not the time you want to buy a vehicle if you can help it. So we would look at purchasing it potentially next spring to replace this unit. Now, the other thing that goes along with this is any of these items that are included in the grant, we can reevaluate the use of the money that is allocated in the grant. Every 6 months, you can take a look and reevaluate it because it's open until 2024, the summer of 2024. So as we get further along into next year, if we decide to do something different to purchase a plow truck or do a outsource snow removal or something like that, we could choose to reallocate the funds elsewhere. But we felt that it was important to include in the grant because this grant is something that doesn't repeat year over year. So things that are one-time expenditures or non-recurring expenditures is a good use of this grant. Excellent. So one of the things we wanted to do was to collect some feedback on this grant plan. So we sent out a Google survey and we had a high participation rate, 91 responses. So for the after-school program, we had 40% of the parents would consider sending their kids to an after-school program. Next. And a number of them would be multiple students. So, you're looking at a significant number of students that potentially would participate in the program. And then we're looking at all of the sessions that there is a significant amount of students that would want to participate. For the summer, that was even a greater group of responses that said they would, 55%. And a lot of them also were multiples, so it's very popular. Yes. And it was split pretty evenly across all the grade levels. And one of the things that's potentially included as a part of the summer program is educational field trips, and that was very popular. So for food service, we had a very significant number of parents said that their students would want to participate in school lunch. So we're looking at every day, close to half of them, and then 2 to 3 times per week, another significant portion. We would provide subsidized meals for those students that qualify, and there are some that within the district that do. And we had a significant number of positive responses for the purchase of the plow truck, and an even larger positive response for the classroom furniture.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Appreciate collecting all the data. So as I mentioned in the beginning, we are going to hopefully submit this this week. The Finance Committee did meet to review this as well. Ken, I don't know if you want to jump in here and share thoughts for the committee.
So I think it's important to note that this application is due this week, but can be changed afterward. I think the items that are on the list, learning loss and the responsive guide community, obviously I think that's a really promising program that we could put in place. Excited about that. The other items, I think, the storage and the plow truck are things that inevitably will need to come out of our general budget at some point. If we invest this money in that, those are things that we can invest long-term into more educational things. So I think it's kind of the idea of where do we spend the money and when. These seem like sensible things. The plow truck, again, is not happening immediately, so that's something we can research and evaluate whether it makes sense to do. Another solution, hire a local firm to do it. Other solution with plow trucks, we're not buying that today, so that's something that we can reevaluate. I think the kitchen thing is interesting. It's an investment, and it's something we've talked about in the past that not only could bring that to our community, which I think a lot of folks within our community would enjoy, but also could be a revenue driver long term. We've talked about ways in which we could use that kitchen, we could farm that out on the weekends to caterers and other folks. So I think that's a worthwhile investment that is worth consideration. So we're supportive of it. I think I'm supportive of it. I don't want to speak for Sarah or Madeline, but the discussion was good, and these items make sense to me.
Madeline, did you want to jump in?
Yes, after, is the mic on? Yes, after our discussion, it was made very clear that there is a deadline at the end of this week that it needs to be submitted. And if we don't make that deadline, we might not be able to get these funds, right? And in the next 4 years, there is flexibility to change it as needed. So I think it's, right now, given the deadline, it makes sense to proceed with these right now.
I would agree, and I do think it is going to help us with our budgeting if we can remove some of these one-time costs as we look ahead to future budget years, if we can use the grant money for that. Carl, did you want to jump in and add anything?
Just that I think it's worth mentioning once again that the after-school and summer programs, which, as we can see from the survey results, were very popular, and there's a high interest. The minimum requirement of the grant is to spend 20% on learning loss. But what we have allocated, $75,000, is closer to 40%. But I do think that is warranted. Our students have done well. We've done well being, remaining open throughout most of the pandemic, but that doesn't mean that it hasn't been a challenge. And I think, a high-quality summer program, I really think would be great for our district. We made a big investment in upgrading our classrooms. We do have air conditioning. So there's a generous amount of money, and knowing that there's an interest in the community, Mrs. Jimick, myself, Mr. Sammartano, and along with the teachers, we can start planning, and that's really exciting to have summer programs and offer that to our children. So those are my thoughts there. I think, the other, as Joe mentioned, the other categories, maybe not as exciting, but they're necessities. They're necessities to keeping the district running and running safely. So Joe and I spent quite a bit of time on this, and he is ready to hit submit. I want to thank him for all the hard work. It was an extensive grant process. But yeah, if we have consensus, we will submit. And probably within 4 or 5 weeks, if we're approved, we can start putting things in place.
Thank you, Carl. Do I have questions? David?
Carl, is the focus of this summer program entirely instructional, or is it also recreational? Good question, David. What we envision is a combination. So there certainly would be academics, but it's summer, and children should enjoy this summer. We think it ought to look different. Right now, we're thinking maybe half days, Monday through Friday for most of July. But we also are considering field trips for students, outdoor activities and learning, bringing in creative projects and things like that. But there also would be academic support. So a combination, it would be something fun and exciting and engaging for the students is what we want.
Do I have other questions or comments? Jocelyn or Matt?
It seemed like, I have a couple, it seemed like from the survey results, which of course are just a convenience survey, it implies that there's probably 60 or 80 or maybe 100 parents who might send their children. Do we even have enough allocated to take on a program like that? Like, should we be dedicating more towards programming?
Our estimate, Jocelyn, is yes. And we could adjust it. I think at a minimum, it should run at least 3 weeks. But if we can go a 4th week.
I'm more wondering, can you hire enough staff to manage the demand for it, for 3 weeks even if it's only 3, you know, based on how you budgeted it out?
Yeah, well, now that we have the results, I think we'd have to go back and really drill down and set up a more thorough budget. You know, we have a preliminary budget in place, what we thought it would cost. We do think $20,000 would cover the expense of it. And again, there's flexibility. Right now, we're thinking mornings, that could be 3 hours, that could be 4 hours. So those details, we'd like to stick within that $20,000 budget. And I think it can be done.
So in a similar vein, are the folks who you would hire to do the instruction going to be Garrison faculty, or is it going to be an open bid for others, or what's the idea?
I actually spoke with the faculty this afternoon, and I let them know that Garrison teachers would be certainly our first choice. So it would be offered to all of our staff. Of course, not everyone, some have other commitments, but if we didn't have enough staff, then certainly we could extend it beyond Garrison. But we would like to make it work with our own teachers who are familiar with the children. You know, they could hit the ground running in July, they know the students, and I think that would be the best situation.
I don't have any more questions about the programming, do you? Well, bring it up, because mine's more general.
It's more of a comment. It just seemed like a lot of some of the feedback from the community, there were concerns about the plow, but I just wanted to sort of articulate what you already articulated, which is it sounds like that's not a concern for the grant itself, because there will be a lot of time to talk about what the plow would actually be in terms of fossil fuel and what kind of plow it would be and all that. So it seems like
We also
that's
77% were in favor of the plow on the survey.
for sure.
Of the
But to the degree there was concern, it sounds like it wouldn't, it's not overly relevant to today's need to get the grant in, is what I'm hearing. So that's good. That's a good thing, right? That's all. I just wanted.
Also, mine's related to that, because you're saying that we have the ability to change, you know, and so is that a one-for-one change? Like, if we put in for equipment and we want to change it down the line, does it have to be for another piece of equipment, or can it be to increase programming?
It could be for
Anything.
use that the grant.
That's approved by ARPA.
So
Okay.
other educational purposes, yes. Yeah, if we decided to offer a different enrichment program or more, we could do that. Because the grant goes over several years, it allows the opportunity to adjust it and change it as you go. So essentially, what you probably have to submit is a amendment to your grant, and then get that approved and change it.
Okay.
It's worth noting this is the first time, or this grant is new to SED as well, so.
Yeah,
there
it was
may be
created
that
as a
they go
result of
as
the
well.
pandemic, yes.
Do I have any other further comments or questions from the board?
I wonder if maybe Dusty could work with some students and build the bookshelves as like a fun program.
I think we're looking for bookshelves to come in a little sooner than that. Dusty has a lot of other things to do.
You're hired. Give a summer job.
But I will say on that note, my only comment on the bookshelves is I know they appear that they are not necessarily curriculum or learning based, but I do appreciate that our administration has really worked to connect what we're doing in the building, the needs of the building to our curriculum. Our curriculum with Fondness and Now requires these thousands of books in every classroom. We need a place to put them. So it's making those connections, I think, that are very important and will set us up for success continually going forward. Madeline?
I have another question on the flexibility of this. So is the process really difficult, or is it an easy change? And with every change, should we send a survey to the community?
I think that, that the process as far as amending the grant won't be that difficult. I mean, we haven't had to amend many grants in the past, but I don't imagine it would be difficult because they recognize that as everything that we thought at the beginning is different than what we thought. So to expect that the next several years are going to be back to the way it was several years ago is probably not. It's not necessarily a sure thing. So I think the idea of the grant and the ability to evaluate it every 6 months and is it working for what we need allows us the flexibility to change it. So I don't think that will be onerous if we decide that we need to revise things.
Will it include a survey from the community every 6 months? Or is that?
I think what we could do more surveys. It wasn't very difficult to conduct this one, but we could get additional feedback as we go.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Sorry, two more, really quick. How does the faculty feel about the idea of the bookshelves? There were, actually all of the proposals, I guess, were they brought in and did they?
Yes. Allison, Joe, and I met directly with our teachers, and I think it's important to point out our teachers have been amazing. They've been flexible, not only COVID, but with the construction project, they've been shuffled around room to room as we go through the stages of the project. Most of our elementary staff now finally have settled into their permanent rooms, and I think they're really looking forward to getting all of their materials out of the boxes, set up, books. One teacher I was speaking to has 2,000 books for her classroom library, but she's only able to display about 400 at this time. So purchasing these bookshelves, and again, Joe said we could probably do this April or May. It would be great to have that in place and complete their classroom setup for them. So they're excited, and they're looking forward to this. So strong support from the teachers.
And I guess the only other thing I was thinking is a couple of the items are like things that we would normally include in a budget, right? And so it's more just a comment. It's a shame to not use these once in a lifetime, hopefully, funds for something innovative, like all of them for something really special. Yes.
I think we're all aware of the budget challenges we're going to have over the next few years, so I'm not sure that we really have the opportunity to do that in a sound fiscal way. I mean, I think we have an enormous class of high schoolers going in next year, and we're going to face challenges no matter what we do. So if we can alleviate some of that by using this money long term, I think it's better for the school. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
It would be great if we could do that. I'm just not sure we're in the position to do that.
I think this is about preserving the innovation we've added recently and not having to make deeper cuts as we move forward with the budget process.
Jocelyn, are there specific innovations that you're thinking of, or?
The only thing that I always think of is having this school be like a community space, which it already is. It's an open place for our communities. So even the presentation last time on the room, it's amazing like that it will be open, for example. But I always think of this place as where people would go in an emergency if it was equipped to be a place like that. So, for example, no more power. How do you create a cool zone for people who don't have access to air conditioning in a heat wave? And the rec center sometimes could possibly serve that, but I don't know if they do. So it's thinking forward as more and more emergencies happen, can this school be a place where we can provide sanction for community members? So that would mean like more than the $30,000 that we're spending on a plow truck, right? It would be solar panels with a backup battery. Kind of idea. But it's like that kind of, if you start up here, maybe you whittle down to something less expensive. Do you have any ideas?
That's really interesting. Is there, if we decide if Jocelyn's idea were something that we wanted to consider more seriously, can we pass this and then adjust it later and consider that sort of thing?
Yeah, so built into the grant is the ability to review every 6 months and change the decisions about what you're using the funds for.
I think we would need to get further into the budget process for next year, which will begin in the coming months, to start seeing what it looks like. Because as Ken pointed out, we do have a much larger group going to high school and fewer students coming into the school in kindergarten. So we need to start thinking about where our money is going in terms of tuition costs as well. And tuition is increasing as well. A lot of our costs are increasing as well. But that is a discussion for another day. Right now, we're just looking at reaching consensus on submitting the grant this week. Do I have consensus from the board to send in this grant as proposed?
I can't ask Joe to do any more work on this. If you've got it buttoned up, you should hit send.
Okay.
I'm sure it's
So,
a lot.
all right, then we're ready to submit. Thank you, Joe, for all your time and energy on this. I appreciate it. Okay. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and move on then to our New York State mask mandate discussion. Before I open the discussion up to the board, Carl is going to review where we stand in terms of mask mandates. I want to emphasize that the mask mandate remains in place through 2/21, February 21st. We do not have the legal authority to change that at this time. Our goal this evening is a discussion. We are not planning to reach a decision or take action. The legal landscape surrounding the mask mandate is evolving daily, so we need to keep that in mind as we have this discussion going forward. Carl, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure. Just to frame this and provide a bit more information, if you've been following the news about mask mandate, it's enough to give you whiplash. A lot of changes from day to day, week to week. We're following it very closely. Sarah is correct. The current Department of Health mandate is in effect through February 21st, and that is when it would expire. But additionally, there was a state Supreme Court decision that basically ruled the governor's mandate as inappropriate, and basically stated that she didn't have the authority to implement this mandate. So that is now being considered by the appellate court of New York State. So that is the next stage. The appellate court has issued a stay through March 2nd, okay? So that means until the appellate court decides to either uphold the state Supreme Court's decision or overrule, the mask mandate will remain in place. Now, they did indicate they may decide to decide one way or the other before March 2nd, but they are assuring us that at the latest it would be March 2nd. So we're watching this closely. Our law firm, we are in touch with them, Gervin and Filazzo up in Albany regularly. They're giving us advice. But to kind of bring it back to our school district and what it means for us, I'm going to give the board and the community just some statistics. On a positive note, the positivity rate, the 7-day rolling average, has really dropped We were seeing numbers, after the holidays of 22, 23% positivity rates. Statewide, just yesterday, it was at 6%. Here in Putnam County, 6.9%. So that is a dramatic drop, and we're happy to see that. Here in Garrison, this week, I'm happy to say there was only one positive case in our school district community, and that person is doing well, is our understanding. That wasn't the case, back right after New Year's. We had several staff members, several students that were positive, and that was quite challenging. Thank goodness everyone seems to have recuperated well and is doing well back at school. On the vaccination status, 62% of children in grades K through 5 are vaccinated. 68% of our middle school students, grades 6 through 8, are vaccinated. Additionally, 15% of the K-5 students had COVID, and 12% of our middle school students had COVID. And this gives them some protection, as everyone I'm sure knows, and some immunity. So when you combine those numbers, you're talking about 77% of our elementary students have either vaccination protection or they've had COVID, so they have some immunity and hopefully antibodies, and 80% of the middle school students. So that is a good thing for Garrison. Right now, it's unclear whether or not our school district would have the ability to extend a mandate. So if the governor and the Department of Health don't renew it past February 21st, or if the appellate court does not uphold the state's decision to have a mask mandate on March 2nd, the question is, well, could Garrison potentially continue to have a mask mandate? And I've been asked that by parents. As of early today, our lawyers are not certain. Okay, so that is something that they're going to research. A lot of this is unprecedented, of course. But I just share that with the board and the community, and would like to open it up for a discussion and to hear your thoughts. But in my opinion, we are moving in a very positive direction, and I know there is a strong desire by our staff, by our community, to try to get back to normal. We're not completely out of the woods either. But we are certainly moving in the right direction. So with that, I would open it up and answer questions or any thoughts on this topic.
So a few things. I put a little bit of this in writing just to collect my thoughts, but a couple umbrella points. I think first, I'd like to move away from thinking about this as sort of permanent one thing or the other. I think we've all now, over the last 2 years, realized that this pandemic has a mind of its own. And so I don't know that ending a mask mandate or starting a mask mandate means we won't go back. I wish we did know that. Hopefully, once we get rid of the masks, we're done with the masks forever. But I think we've all gotten cynical about how this thing is. I think being data-based would be great. I would love if there was some larger guidance about sort of universal standards. That's beyond our control, but what the state, what the nation, what scientists think is an appropriate positivity rate that schools in general could have to sort of know what to do. Another thing, and I'll try not to go on for more than a couple minutes here. I think it's important to think not just about concerns about sickness, but concerns about quarantine. I think as angst over actual I think we're lucky now to say, with tragic exceptions, that people are generally less worried about actually getting sick with the vaccines and with Omicron. But the rules of quarantining in many people's jobs haven't caught up yet to that lack of concern. And so I've seen so many families' lives get disrupted. So I am worried about increased spread. I'm worried about removing the masks before people's jobs have caught up. And that policy then ransacking people's schedules as Omicron runs through their family. And even if they're not that sick, they're not allowed to send their younger child to nursery school or go to work for 10 days or 5 days or whatever their own workplace policy might be. There's so many things that are linked together, and it's frustrating that we don't and again, this goes far beyond the people in this room, we don't link these things together enough. Similarly with the vaccines, also linked to the mandate issue. All that said, I think we're all anxious to remove the masks. I personally don't think we should, I don't think anybody should make the mask mandate optional until the vaccines are fully available to kids under 5, which sounds like it'll be sometime this month. For families who want to vaccinate their children under 5 but don't yet have that option and have siblings who are younger than the students here, it seems inconsiderate to those families in that predicament to make the decision before they have access. And especially since that doesn't sound so far away. I know that's a little murky because the news has been confusing about under 5 vaccines because it sounds like it may or may not be effective. But nonetheless, it sounds like we'd be sort of leaving those families in the dust a little bit instead of just waiting that out now that we know the FDA is considering that. Warm air is not that far away. I know psychologically it feels far away, but by the end of March, temperatures are usually consistently in the 50s. That would make it easier to keep the windows open more. So that coincides with the vaccine authorization. It feels like we're so close to having kind of a lot of things we want to check off that would just make this decision easier, that right now, to me, it just feels like mildly premature. I'm very eager to do it. I just feel like we could wait for a couple of these things to fall into place. Hopefully the rates will continue to go down if we mirror what's happening around the world with Omicron. And then lastly, I'd love to do this in line with a lot of districts just to our south. We've been able, and this is a credit, as we've said, and should never stop saying for the rest of our lives, to you and the teachers and everybody that the school's been able to stay open. I feel like masks are a part of that. I don't want to get out in front of the pack. I think part of this is precipitated by the fact that a lot of these districts are having these discussions. So I also don't want to fall behind the pack. But this seems like a very bizarre thing to do in isolation. This feels like exactly the kind of thing schools would want to do together. So if lots of schools...
I'll just jump in there and say that I don't feel like this is something we are going to do in isolation, given the legal framework surrounding it. There are mandates currently in place, but if that mandate were lifted, and there are questions about whether we could actually enforce our own mandate, if that was something we even wanted to do, a lot of the conversation I think we want to start thinking about is, what does the off-ramp look like?
Yep.
What does it look like in our district? I think that's what all districts are going to start looking at too, is less about when. That might be decided for us in a large part in this conversation. So when that happens, what does it look like here? How are we prepared?
So then, with that in mind, I think we should have a discussion about, and just to be extra clear, I am not against taking masks off. I desperately want it. As a board member, as a teacher myself, as a parent, I want these masks off. I just want to make sure we do it in the most responsible way. And with that in mind, your point, Sarah, I think we need clarity about indoor protocols like eating, physical education, instruments. Those things are all, there's a real ripple effect when the masks come off. This will be a huge shift. Outdoor recess, outdoor eating. Do we go back to having stricter home enforcement on symptoms? Do we go back to having temperature checks? Will that not be necessary? So I think we do, I agree, we need to have all this. I guess that was a lot of words to say, I don't have a position, but I absolutely agree that it's getting close, and I'm glad to say that. So I just hope we're taking all these moving parts into consideration, and thanks for bearing with me and obliging. Too many words. Thank you.
Your words are welcome.
Can I just, one of the major things I think would be our goal is to minimize disruption to learning, right? And so the current guidance from the state is that if you're unvaxxed and exposed, you have to quarantine for 5 days. So that means, especially as we take our masks off, that means there's definite exposure in a room, whether or not you're close to that person. That means 30% on average of our elementary kids will have to quarantine, and 30% of our middle school kids, because there's less than 70% vaccinated. Unless a few of those fall in the just had COVID in 3 months, but we don't, only maybe Nurse Melissa knows that. So they're not a one-to-one, right? So I just think we should consider that when you take the mask off, then everyone's exposed in a room, and also and then what does that mean for the kids who have to stay home? And I think it could be a lot, and so we just should work through those numbers, because that would concern me.
To clarify that we are only, even if the mandate is lifted, masks would be optional for those who chose them. We're not talking about going the opposite direction. And I know that, to her credit, Nurse Melissa does a very good job of looking at every positive case, every situation to see.
I'm not saying that some students wouldn't have their masks on still. I'm saying that anyone who is unvaccinated, which is 38% of our elementary school, would be an exposed student at that point, and they would have to quarantine for 5 days. That's a lot of people out of the classroom, if that happens.
Yeah, and Jocelyn, you make a good point, and I have to say that number of children who were quarantined would have been really high in early to mid-January. But as I said earlier, right now, we only have one positive case.
Case in that classroom, if all the kids weren't wearing masks, or half the kids, or any of the unvaxxed kids weren't wearing a mask,
then
they
it
would
would
be counted as an exposure,
Yeah.
and that means a third of the class would have to be quarantined.
It would result in quarantine, you're right, and
Because right now, none of the kids in that class have to be quarantined.
unless, and in many of the cases, I have to say this, our parents have been outstanding in being cautious, and if a child has symptoms, proactively calling the nurse. So in some cases, what I mentioned earlier, we've had a number of children, of course, that have been positive over this winter. However, many of them never came to school because the parents were diligent and they reached out. The other good thing that I didn't mention earlier is back in January, there was a complete shortage of tests. Now we have a steady flow of take-home tests as well as tests for here in the school. So parents will see over the weeks, the coming weeks, more and more tests being sent home. They're quite expensive. The one kit that has the 2 tests in it, I think it's iHealth is the name of it, that we're receiving, costs $25. And that's expensive to keep purchasing a kit like that. But the state, one positive thing is the Department of Health is providing a lot of tests, and we do plan to send them home and for people to use proactively. So the other thing I think Sarah kind of touched on this is Allison, Nurse Melissa, and I have been discussing this regularly. If on February 21st, just let's play this out hypothetically, if the Department of Health does not extend the mask mandate, which is a possibility, and if our attorneys say, as a district, you don't have the authority to impose a mask mandate, we do need to be prepared to proceed and keep our children and staff safe. As Sarah points out, masks would not be eliminated, they would become optional. And in that case, anyone who potentially is not vaccinated or immunocompromised or has maybe a family member who they're concerned about, they certainly could wear masks. We would do our job as administration and teachers and faculty to protect those children, to make sure there was no peer pressure, things like that. I'm not saying that is an easy thing to do, but we have discussed and we have thought through how we would go about doing that. We would also give parents the opportunity to inform us. Any parent who has a child who they would like to continue wearing a mask, you could simply let us know. We would make sure the appropriate teachers and support staff know, and we could try to help monitor that within reason. We can't guarantee 100% of the time that we will watch every minute, but I think we could supervise that. We know our families and children well. The disinfecting would continue. We would still, right now, our children are sitting in 3-foot radius in their classroom setups. Allison, I believe, still maintains 6 feet during lunch, which is always helpful. So a lot of the things that are in place would continue. Again, it would just be the one possibility is that the mask becomes optional, either in late February, potentially early March.
Carl, are you hearing from parents who are eager to get the masks removed? I mean, is that sentiment out there in the community?
David, I've heard it's a pretty even split. So parents have been great about reaching out, sharing their thoughts in a very positive, respectful way, but we're hearing on both sides. That's why I think this discussion is important, that we're doing this publicly, because I think some parents assume that it was a local decision. And like I said earlier in consulting with our attorneys, it may not be. So if at some point the mask mandate ends, we may not have the ability to continue it. So the decision may be made for us. I think it's worth emphasizing. So in that case, I think we would just support our parents as best as we could in individual cases. And you know, quite frankly, there's nobody better than Nurse Melissa. I've worked with a lot of school nurses, and I'm confident that she would be able to really provide individual support for children and families, you know, along with our principal, Mrs. Jimick, and the rest of the staff.
Madeline, Courtney.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the timeline? Because it sounds that a lot of this is out of our control, or it may be out of our control, depending on what our lawyers say. If we do have some sort of control, when would we know about, and when will there be a vote? I'm assuming that this is right before February 21st?
Yes. So I'm sorry, but the answer is we don't know. There's two possibilities that I think are strong possibilities. The one, again, would be the Department of Health and the governor issued a mask mandate back in the fall. It expires February 21st. So there is a possibility, that's roughly 2.5 weeks from now, there's a possibility that they don't extend it beyond February 21st, especially if the numbers continue to drop. Then we would need to get legal guidance on whether or not we even have the ability to continue a mask mandate. If we don't, then this is decided for us. If the governor and the Department of Health extend that 90-day mask mandate, then I think this will be decided with the appellate court. And they're telling us that the latest they will make a decision is March 2nd, maybe even sooner. So we're really in a holding pattern, I guess is what this amounts to. And our lawyers, you know, again, this is so new. You know, even districts with the last situation where the state Supreme Court ruled the mask mandate as invalid, different law firms were giving districts different advice. That's why, you know, people that are following this may have heard that some districts right away lifted the mask mandate basically for a day, and then had to, you know, impose a mask mandate the following day, which was very confusing for children, as you would imagine. But that was based on legal advice that they were receiving. So even the lawyers are experiencing difficulty following this, and we have a great law firm, and I'll stay, you know, closely in touch with them about this topic. I think if we needed a special board meeting, I would talk to Sarah and Courtney, and we could probably arrange something if we needed to, but we may not need to.
Thank you, Courtney.
I want to say, like all things COVID, it's obviously going to continue to evolve, and I feel really fortunate that we have a great lawyer who's giving us great advice. My biggest concern of it's whenever the masks come off or making masks optional is making sure that the school is on top of any potential bullying in the school regarding those children who still wear masks, whether by their own choice or by their parents, and those who do not. And I think I would hope that we think about how to handle that, really give the teachers and aides tools to handle that, and recognize the difference between elementary school and middle school, and the different situations that may arise.
Again, Courtney, you make a great point. We've started early discussions, Allison, myself, faculty, Nurse Melissa, but we will continue to have those discussions because, if a small percentage of students are wearing masks and the majority choose not to, that could be challenging. So I'm going to, right now, be hopeful that that is something that we can manage, and we would keep a close eye on it, I assure you.
Kent?
I think we've talked about following the science all along with this. I think I'm a big believer in that. If the Department of Health and the Department of Education are not mandating masks, I don't really see a reason that this district needs to be an outlier. We don't have a special circumstance here. Jocelyn brings a really interesting point about the quarantining and the kids being exposed and that element, but there is an element of personal responsibility as well. Those children aren't vaccinated, that's their parents' choice, and that's the situation that they have to make a decision about if they're willing to take the risk of their kid getting quarantined, being inconvenienced by those things. We need to live with this, it's not going away. If we continue to push masks when the risk is very low, when we need to actually need the masks down the road, it's going to be harder and harder to implement them. And I guarantee we're going to need the masks down the road. So when it's low, we need to adapt to that, and we need to learn to live with it a little bit and put the personal responsibility on people who don't want to get vaccinated.
Okay. The last point about if there's faculty, I think having a plan for how to work with the faculty who might start to feel unease as it is inevitably going to be when the masks start coming off. There could be some of our faculty that will be scared or sad or worried. So making sure that the district plans for assisting those teachers and aides and staff members so that they feel comfortable.
Definitely. I also ironically broke my mask just now. Ironically, I'm extra.
Dusty, we have extra.
They're in the main lobby.
Matt, did you?
I had one last question on the quarantining thing. Hopefully, we won't have a lot of quarantine students, and this will all be moot. If quarantine numbers go up, but we have students who don't feel ill, can we have virtual access to the classroom that's like consistent? So if a kid's sitting at home, like until the quarantine rules catch up to the mildness of what kids are experiencing, vaccinated or unvaccinated, they still have to stay home if they have COVID, right? So if a vaccinated asymptomatic kid tests positive for COVID, they still can't come in for the week, right?
That is correct.
So I feel like vaccinated and unvaccinated, it would be great if they could see into the classroom.
Yeah.
But not in other circumstances. I'm not advocating for access to the classroom virtually, but in this specific circumstance that seems like we may be facing in the spring of having students who feel okay, but have been, because of rules that are still in books, aren't allowed to come to school, I would love for them to be able to view their classroom, especially older students, so they can keep up, especially if they don't feel particularly sick, which hopefully they won't.
Yes, Matt, you may not be aware of this, but right now in grades 4 through 8, we do have that situation. So children.
I was not aware, and I feel like an idiot, but thanks.
No, you have younger children, so we decided not to do it in K1, 2, and 3. Am I right, Mrs. Jimick? But we actually considered it, so maybe it is something to expand where we thought the younger children may have a little bit more difficulty remoting in. So Mrs. Jimick does provide either through paraprofessionals or substitutes. The teachers are designing the instruction, they are delivering the instruction. But we started that, and I got to say again, kudos to the staff because they embraced it. We did not do that last year. We used iTutor, a different model. They started doing it this year, and it worked out really well. The teachers were fantastic, and Mr. Samartano and Mrs. Jimick supported them. So, but maybe it is something because other districts are doing it with the primary grades. So it's something worth discussing more with the teachers.
That's okay, thank you.
Before we wrap up, there are a couple of thoughts. I do feel it's important for us to follow the law on this, however it goes, in terms of our district being an outlier and relying on our council. If you have questions for council, please send them to myself and Carl as this goes forward. I also think, we're talking about the numbers are falling, and as we look at the impact on teaching and learning, I think when the masks come off, I think that will have an improved impact on our teaching and learning. The students will be able to speak clearer, the teachers will be understood better. I think there's some positives here too that should be weighed in account.
Masks are positive. I think it's just when it happens, which is going to, do we have support for the teachers? Do we have a good quarantine plan? Like, I definitely don't take it that I was saying masks off are bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I said we need to have plans so that people feel safe and protected.
Yeah, it's definitely about figuring out what is the law requiring of us, and then we will have, what is our plan going forward. So on that note, if you have questions, the band question is a good one. Any other specifics about what we're going to do, how does that impact it, how does it change our COVID protocols? We should continue to send them in. It would be my preference as this plays out, perhaps not to have a special meeting if we can avoid it, but I'm happy to call one if we feel it is necessary. Do you have any other further thoughts, questions, comments? Okay. Next, we have public comment. There was a public comment sign-up sheet, which I have here. Before I move to that, I will read our policy on public comment. Public comment is intended for members of the community to speak openly and voice concerns. In accordance with policy 3220 of the Garrison Union Free School District, any person wishing to speak shall comply with all provisions of this policy. Comments about specific school personnel or individual students is a violation of board policy. Concerns regarding students or personnel should be discussed privately with the superintendent or appropriate administrator. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes, and speakers are asked to conduct themselves in a respectful manner. The board will listen to comments but will not engage in dialogue. Any necessary follow-up will be noted and provided through the appropriate channel. Members of the public wishing to speak during the public comment period are asked to place their name, which I have here on the sign-in sheet, and will be called forward. Video conferencing does not apply because we're not in video conferencing. So first up, I have Crystal Ford of Garrison, please. Oh, yeah. That's the I can have people add, right? Sure. Come on up.
Hello, everyone. So I think it's really great that we have an opportunity to apply for this amount of funding, and this is great, all the work that you've done. I'm happy that there's stuff in there for hot lunch and all the other educational opportunities. I will say that, you know how I feel, that there's nothing environmental, no environmental initiative in the ARPA funds. And, there's never a good time for environmental stuff. Not good time to put it in the budget. It's not a good time. It's just never a good time. So, but I know that we're a school that actually really cares about the environment. Like, we have an environmental educator. We host youth climate summits. We pass resolutions saying, we care about climate change. And I guess when I saw, that we wanted to buy another gas-powered plow truck, I was like, first of all, there's electric vehicles, electric F-150 trucks coming out, Rivians, all kinds of electric trucks coming out on the market in the next couple of years. And I really would love to see us be moving away from purchasing fossil fuel equipment at this point in time. And then the other thing is, we actually only plow, how many times a year? 5, 6, 7 times a year. I just called the local plow company, and I was like, how much would it cost to plow the Garrison school? And they're like, based on Google Maps, $500 a push. So, okay, so $500 a push. Let's see, we spend $60,000 on the plow truck over 14 years. That breaks down to $4,200 a year. That would equal 8.4 plows a year. I mean, thanks to global warming, we probably wouldn't be plowing in 10 years from now. So my point is a plow truck actually a really great investment? I really personally think no, and that we should actually contract that one out and then see how it goes. You know, if we find, wow, it snows like 20 times a year, then maybe we should buy a plow truck. But I'm going to guess it maybe snows like 6-7 times a year where we're clearing the actual driveway. So that was my that was the thing that sort of just like stuck with me. I'm like, wow, we have all this money, and then we're like, we're going to do all these awesome things, and then a plow truck. So that was the thing that stuck with me. And then I also kind of wish that we had carved out $3,500 just to buy some electric lawn equipment. You know, there are really great electric ride-on lawnmowers. We would no longer have to buy gasoline and fossil fuels to mow the lawn, so it'd be, you know, a nice carbon-neutral way to take care of our lawn at the school. And of course, big picture, I would love to see solar panels with a battery backup. Everybody talks about how they wish we had a generator at our school. Well, we can pair solar with Tesla Powerwalls, and then it could be a actual emergency center. It could be there to serve the public in case of you know, power outages in the winter or in the summer. And I don't think people know this, but the rec center now has solar on its rooftop, which is amazing. I don't think nobody actually really knows this, but they have solar going right now. And they end up using this company, and I have actually some information that I was going to give to you, Joe, SunPower. And what they ended up doing was they ended up doing a purchase power agreement. So they didn't have to outlay the cash up front. What they're doing is they're just paying the exact same electricity bill to this company, and then within 25 years, I believe they will own the panels outright, and they have a lifespan of about 40 years. So after 25 years, then you're just purely, like, that savings is straight to you, but it's important to note that your electric bill doesn't go up every month, and you are getting solar panels, solar energy. And this is the company that our town used to put it on their center, so I wanted to leave that with you. So, and then like, yeah, that's basically, I just wanted to mention those two things. And that, you know, it's like, I know you don't have to care about the climate, you don't have to care about the environment, but a lot of these things that I'm talking about save us money. And if that's what we really care about at the end of the day, saving money, then we really gotta like look at what we do from a climate and environmental lens, because that is the future, and we are showing our kids like, we're walking the walk, we're walking the talk, and that's what's, you know, the most important thing. So I think that's my 3 minutes. And thank you, everyone, for all you're doing.
Thank you. Next on the sign-in sheet, I have Rachel Shapiro.
This is my first school board meeting, and we've just moved here, and I've also never spoken into a podium, so I'm just going to say that. I really support everything Crystal just said, and so I'm not going to go into that and say those things again, but I was thinking about the school cafeteria and how it's not, I'm really in support of the school's cafeteria being refurbished, and I would love her to not have to pack lunches every day, and knowing that it's sort of a luxury item for everyone, because it's not about kids being financially, there's not a lot of financial need in the district for the lunches to be subsidized. I don't know what the facilities are, but I just think it's really important to make sure that there's a dishwasher that's in place, because I don't want to be using disposable utensils and plates and creating more waste there. And the other thing I just wanted to talk about was the masks. I'm very excited for my children to take their masks off, and I'm looking forward to it. And when the discussion was going on, I was just thinking that there's also an emotional component to taking them off. Like a new vulnerability that's going to be in place maybe for kids, and I just was thinking that maybe it would be wise to have discussion about that, just dialoguing with the kids about what does it feel like to have a mask off, what does it feel like for people to see you, and yeah, that was just a thought that I had, that it could be beneficial as dialogue. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Lauren Bernard.
Hey, I just actually wanted to say that I was like so pleased, and I know that a lot of other parents were as well, to receive the survey that you just put out, because it felt like, although we do a lot of, there's other stuff we've taken surveys on, it felt like, at least, I've not been here all that long, but it felt like the first time that it was asking for parent input about future stuff, as opposed to just like current need, like what is the need of your household for this? But it really was like, all right, we're being asked about, something that's looking forward. So I really appreciate that. Along those lines, though, when there was talk about changing submitting the ARPA grant, but then if changing an item in it, that if it is going to be like a big shift, that I think that it's super important that if that's going to be a shifted item, that there be another survey. Otherwise, I think it would feel like a bait and switch a little bit. Like we supported one thing, but then it wasn't really fully listened to, even if what the parents are asking for maybe doesn't align with your own particular personal belief, that like there is, you shouldn't vote against your conscience, but like that it is a representation of the community, which includes the parents to a large degree. So I guess it's a thank you, but then it's also like, as you move forward, I think continuing that is really important in terms of like keeping parent faith.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment at this time? We will have another public comment section later this evening. Okay. Great. I'm going to go ahead then and move on. Next up on the agenda, we have president's remarks. I'm going to be very brief. I don't have a lot. We've talked a lot already. I will just say that the Westchester Putnam School Board Association reached out, and there are Zoom meetings with Senator Sue Serino and Assemblywoman Sandy Galiff. Carl and I will be attending those via Zoom. With Senator Serino, it is February 11th at noon, and with Assemblywoman Galiff, it is this Friday. I'm assuming it still happens if we get iced in here at noon, seeing it's via Zoom. Other than that, I don't have anything else. I'm going to turn it over to Carl for superintendent's remarks.
I just have one, and that is a big congratulations to all of our student athletes. So our two basketball teams, both the boys and the girls modified teams, are on a little bit of a winning streak, but I want to emphasize it really doesn't matter what that final score is. I think what matters is the sportsmanship, the motivation, the learning that's taking place, and Mr. Beckley and the two coaches are just doing a great job, and our students, if you haven't had a chance to see a game, come out and catch. I think there's only a few left, but they're just making us really proud, and big congratulations. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Carl. I'm going to move on then to committee reports. First up, we have the policy committee. Courtney, I'm going to let you take over.
Okay. Very briefly, the policy committee met a couple of weeks ago. I've lost track of time, but we received the full binder of the updated policy from Erie One BOCES. We went through. Jocelyn, Sarah, Dusty, and Carl and myself went through pretty much page by page, made sure that all of our changes were there, pulled out a couple of policies that we had questions about, went to send those off to the lawyers, reviewed a couple of others. It's going back to Erie One BOCES, and we're hoping for the final version and to present it to the board I think mid to late March. And we are going to have an updated policy binder.
Can I just ask related to that? I think it's mandatory that we put, I think it's mandatory or it's requested that we have the certain policies on the website. Does that then, once we approve, then is that something that Mike has to work on? Or Dusty? And which ones? I hope not all of those have to go up. Unless it's just one big PDF. Which is fine. Okay.
Yeah,
So it could be easy.
There are a couple of policies that are posted on the website currently, although they might not be that easy to find. There are some on there. One of the things that we did with Erie One is we increased our policy services with Erie One. And then we also upgraded our board docs to Board Docs Pro. So Erie One and Board Docs work hand in hand, and they become our publisher, essentially, for our policy manual. So once the board adopts the policy manual, we'll send that all off to them, and they'll take care of getting it published on Board Docs. And of course, Board Docs is linked directly to our website, so that covers our compliance. Mm-hmm.
I just want to add that I'm very excited after 3 years to finally have finished this document. And seeing as it took us 3 years to get through it, I believe we're talking about 2 weeks for the rest of the board to read it and learn it and ask questions. Does that sound good, everyone?
There's going to be a quiz.
We have gone through it very carefully. You do not need to memorize every word of this gigantic book, but you will have a copy for reference. Thank you so much.
We slimmed it down slightly.
Yeah, very slightly. It has been such a joy. Thank you. Okay, sorry. Next up, we have Finance Committee report. Ken? I don't know if you have anything beyond what we've talked about so far.
No, I mean, I again appreciate the hard work from Joe and Carl to get the application together in a timely fashion, get it submitted, in a great conversation we had just digging into some of the details of it. I will reiterate that, you know, we will have a challenging budget next year, and so I'll start to sound like a broken record, but we do need to keep considering all of that as we talk about what we're doing, because we have pressures that we haven't had in the past, not only with high school tuition increasing significantly, but also just inflation, healthcare costs, all those things. So just everybody, not to be the Grim Reaper, but just a reminder on that.
I think that's an important one. I think it was a great meeting as well, so thank you. Okay, I'm going to move on then, unless we have any questions on the committee reports. All right, accepting the minutes. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District does hereby accept the minutes of the regular meeting of January 19th, 2022 as presented. May I have a motion, please? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays? Abstentions. Thank you. Next up, we have our consent agenda, the personnel items. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of Carl L. Albano, Superintendent, hereby approves the personnel consent agenda items 8B through F. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Carl, do you want to speak to a few of these?
Sure. There are just 3 items. We're adding a per diem sub, or a sub as needed on a daily basis. You may get a little concerned about seeing so many subs appointed, but the last 2 that we appointed both got full-time teaching jobs. So we're replenishing them. We're in a good place. Teacher attendance has been great. Quarantines are down. But just in case we need a sub, that's why we're recommending appointing this person who's interested in working with us. The second one is a bit more complex. This is a restructuring of our transportation and facilities department. As the board knows, Michael Twardy has officially retired. His retirement is effective the end of February, but he is currently on vacation. So we had to move pretty swiftly to make sure with a capital project, probably about 50% complete, with transportation needs, with other facility needs. Joe and I did a lot of analysis, a lot of thinking about this, and we proposed to the board that we restructure the model, and that Joe Jimick, who is our business administrator, also, what people may not know, has an extensive background. Joe is an engineer, as well as a business official. He has extensive experience with capital projects, facilities management. He's also overseen transportation in his previous school districts that he worked in. So I, for one, have been very impressed with Joe. He's been an integral part of the capital project and keeping it on track and under budget. So what I'm doing here is recommending Joe for a stipend amount to oversee both transportation and facilities. Additionally, we would like to appoint two of our current SRP employees. One is Brian Bruning, and the other is Butch Grassi, or Robert Grassi. One to oversee, or be the point person for facilities, that would be Mr. Grassi, and the other to be the point person for transportation, that is Brian Bruning. They both have extensive experience. Brian's been with the district, I believe, about 17 years. He knows every single route. He's very knowledgeable of transportation. He would be boots on the ground, so to speak, of course, with Joe supporting him and overseeing transportation. Robert Grassi, on the other hand, has extensive 20-plus years custodial and facilities work. So having him be our point person here with facilities would work well. Overall, the district will save approximately $50,000 annually. I will say, and the board has heard me say this, that wasn't the motivation. The motivation was quality, and I think with these three individuals, we will have quality services. I will say I always admired Mike Twardy. The combination of transportation and facilities was really challenging to do both. And separating it this way, we think makes a lot of sense, and we have a lot of confidence that with these three individuals it will work. So we have an MOA that is agreed upon with our labor union, which basically allows the district at some point in the future, if we want to go back to the original model that was in place, we certainly could do that. But for now, I have every bit of confidence that this would work. So it's 3 stipends for the individuals, and that is my recommendation to the board.
Pause here, questions
Yep.
or comments?
Oh, sure. Any questions about the model?
On this model?
Yeah, I wouldn't agree to do it if I didn't think it would work.
Good,
So,
good.
yes.
Thank you for doing it.
Donna?
Can you go over the model? So this has to be voted on every year. Can you just go over a little bit?
Sure,
That
Madam.
and it's a stipend. It's not a increase to the salary. It can, right? We have to vote on it every year to approve it.
Yes. That is correct. Our 2 SRP employees, so both Brian and Butch, they're going to remain in their titles, in their civil service titles. This is an additional stipend to take on additional responsibility. So what you're voting on this evening is a prorated amount through the end of June. If we're pleased with the model and the way it's working, then at the reorg meeting, I would come back and recommend we renew these stipends for the upcoming 22-23 school year. So, and it would be that, going forward on an annual basis. You are correct.
We always have the option to return, because the previous position was you have to hire off a list of people who are approved, who have taken the civil service test. So we can always return to that model and go to that list. But I, for one, appreciate having people who have experience in our district and the cost savings. Do I have any other questions or comments on this model? Okay. I'm going to reread. Oh, sorry, Carl.
Can I just make a quick comment on the last one?
Oh, the last
So
one.
there is, Dusty was giving me the prompt. There is an outstanding veteran teacher, Mrs. Robin Waters, who I know really struggled with this decision, but she has submitted her resignation for the purpose of retirement. And it's before the board to accept this evening. This is really bittersweet because Robin is a teacher leader. She's one of the most dedicated teachers I've had the honor of observing and working alongside. And she's a big loss. But on the flip side, I know she has a lot of exciting plans and interests and hobbies and things that she wants to do in retirement. So she's given this district over 30 years. She's amazing. She's working just as hard every day, even though she'll only be with us through the end of the year. So I won't go on too much, but she's just outstanding. And she knows how Allison and I feel about her, and we will celebrate her a bit more in June. In June, we do a meeting where we invite retirees as well as celebrate those who are getting tenure. So you'll have another opportunity to congratulate her, but her retirement is on this agenda.
Do you have any questions or comments there before we move on? Okay. I'm going to reread this motion. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of Carl L. Albano, Superintendent, hereby approves the items of the personnel consent agenda as presented. May I have a motion, please? Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays? Abstentions? Thank you. Okay. Next, we will move on to our new business. We have CSE, CPSE recommendations. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District approve the Committee on Special Education and the Committee on Preschool Special Education recommendations and student placements 17522, 17354, 17447, 17293. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays, abstentions. Thank you. Next, we have a request for approval of change orders. Hudson 3, Hudson 4, Hudson 5, and Hudson 6. I'll read the recommended action first. Whereas the school district entered into a contract with Hudson Valley Electrical Construction Management contractor dated June 3rd, 2021, the contract, for the performance of electrical work in connection with the school district's reconstruction project. And whereas the school district desires and/or requires the addition of services and/or materials to be performed by contractor in connection with the project. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District approves change order numbers Hudson 3, Hudson 4, Hudson 5, and Hudson 6, which are attached to this resolution, authorizes the President of the Board of Education or the Superintendent of Schools to execute such change order on behalf of the school district and ratifies any action already taken by either of them in that regard, and further authorizes and ratifies all actions taken by the Board President, Superintendent of Schools, or either of their designees to effectuate the requirements of the change order. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Seconded. Thank you. Carl, do you want to speak to these, or Joe?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you have 4 change orders, all due to the capital project. They're all in the $3,500 to $4,500 range, and all for Hudson Valley Electrical Company, and for unforeseen circumstances. Conduit, switches, panels, things such as that. If the board would like to hear a little bit more about the technical part of it, I'd either defer to Joe or Eric Wilson, our project manager, is here.
Sorry to bring this up. So all of them make sense. I just have a question on change order number 6, right? All of the others seem unforeseen. But change order number 6, we know that we were going to have unit ventilators. Why are we getting a change order for the transformer for the unit ventilators and also the fuse disconnect switch for the heat pump? Is that not included as part of the base?
Not included as a part of the base contract or the equipment supply. So there was some items that the equipment supplier thought that the electrical contractor was providing, but that was not a part of the construction document. So there was an additional charge that was needed to cover these transformers and disconnect switches that were not a part of the plan documents, and they were not provided by Train.
Thank you. So it's an adjustment to the scope from one trade. So one trade thought that they had this,
Well,
but
it was
in.
the difference is because the equipment was bought directly by the district, and then the installation was done, is done by the contractor, and then the electrical work is done by someone else. The portion of the work that was needed in order to interface the power supply that the electrician is providing and the units wasn't there. It wasn't on any of the documents, so it was a miss.
So then, this is going to be projected to all of the unit ventilators, right? Not just in this phase. We're going to have to capture that additional cost for the other phases, or at least know that those change orders will come.
I believe this covers it for the project in total.
The entire project. Oh, great.
Eric, do you want to join us?
Eric, please come to the podium.
This is for the first phase.
For the first phase.
There'll be another, about, not as large a number, but another number for the middle school connections as well. But this covers the first phase of the work, so there will be another subsequent piece to this.
Thank you. So, and the reason I bring that up is because that's cost from the contingency funds that should go into a category that we know that is coming up, and that we should hold it for these upcoming change orders.
Okay. Do we have any other questions or comments regarding the change orders as presented? Okay. All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays? Abstentions? Thank you. We've now moved on to our second public comment section of the evening. I'm not going to read the whole policy again, but if anyone else would like to comment this evening, I invite you to the podium now, and I have my sign-in sheet here. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and move on then to board member comment and other discussion. Jocelyn? Okay. David?
I would just say that I'm a senior member of this board, and I've been on for 7 years, and it's a great board, but I don't think that we've ever had somebody in this board until tonight who had the intensity and the knowledge to question the change order for a unit ventilator. I just want to say, Natalie, you are just wonderful. You really are. It's great.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Moving on to Madeline.
Off the topic, or almost related to the bookshelves in the classroom, there's been a lot of articles of what's happening nationwide, of book banning across in Tennessee, the book banning across the U.S. So I hope that with these bookshelves, we have the opportunity to really open up the library and expose the district children's to every book. I'm just personally upset of banning of any books, so whatever we can do in the classroom, if the library is going to the classroom, that we make sure that is diverse library, and that we're really open with what type of books. I don't know if there is a policy, but what type of books that our kids are exposed to.
In terms of policy?
I don't know if there's a policy of like or if it's part of the curriculum. I just want to make sure that whatever it is will be great to just keep it open and keep our kids interested in reading. And I don't know, if there's any other ideas or anything we can do as a district, that would be great.
Our policies are pretty wide open on that, aside from we approve curriculum, is currently the policy in terms of the overreaching. So we would like approve Fonteness and Pinnell as the curriculum, but not the specific titles. There's really a lot of agency given to individual teachers as well within and administrators to work on that.
That is true. I mean, currently there's a very robust
and diverse collection of books in every classroom. Additionally, the board approved a substantial budget as part of last year's complete budget to replenish, to update, and continue that. So I know Allison has worked closely with our teachers. These libraries were initially set up with our balanced literacy consultants. They made great recommendations, but there's always room to expand and improve, and that is happening. And again, just something really basic, but physically allowing teachers to set up their rooms with these bookshelves, get them organized, take an inventory, and then place additional orders is important. But you raise a good point on making sure we maintain a robust and diverse collection of literature and quality literature for our students.
Thank you. Okay. Courtney?
Just two quick things. One, I'm very glad that we all have until June to prepare our statements about Robin Waters retiring, because I can't do that tonight. And second of all, I wanted to thank Carl and Joe for your creativity in restructuring the facilities and transportation. Time and time again, you've shown that you have worked so hard to really understand the district and what the district needs and the individual aspects and the unusualness that is Garrison. It would have, I'm sure, been easier for you to pull up the civil service list that was 3 years old and make a couple of phone calls for the person off the top of the list, but instead you took the time to think about what we really need and what would really work best for the district, and I really appreciate that. So, thank you.
Thank you, Courtney. Ken?
No comment.
Matt?
No comment.
I have no further comment this evening as well. Next up, we have enter executive session. Be resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby enters into executive session for the purpose of reviewing the personnel records of particular probationary personnel, discussing the employment history of particular persons, and discussing collective negotiations with the GTA and SRP bargaining unions pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law. May I have a motion, please?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Nays? Abstentions. We will adjourn from executive session without taking any further action this evening. Thank you very much.